I never thought I'd be the kind of man who checks his wife's purse. For 23 years, I trusted her with everything: my heart, my home, my future. We built a life together in a small town where everyone knew everyone, where your word meant something, where you didn't lock your doors at night because you didn't need to. But that Tuesday afternoon, standing in our kitchen with a bank statement in my hand, I realized I didn't know her at all. The paper was still warm from the printer. I'd gone to the bank to deposit my paycheck, something I did every 2 weeks without fail, and asked for a balance inquiry. Just routine, just checking. The teller, a young woman named Sarah who'd known us for years, handed me the slip with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Here you go, Mr. Patterson," she said quietly. I looked down at the number. Then I looked again. Our savings account, the one we'd been building for 15 years, the one that was supposed to have $63,000 in it, the one that was going to pay for our daughter's wedding next spring, and maybe, just maybe, let us finally take that trip to Ireland we'd been dreaming about, had $942 left. $942? I stood there in the bank lobby, people moving around me like water around a stone, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't understand how $62,000 just disappeared. That's when Sarah leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Mr. Patterson, the withdrawals, they've been happening for almost 2 years. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones, all made by Mrs. Patterson." I drove home in silence. The radio was off. My phone was buzzing with texts I didn't read. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, something was crumbling. When I walked through our front door, my wife Rachel was humming in the kitchen, making her famous pot roast. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the house. The same house we'd bought 20 years ago. The same kitchen where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries and ordinary Tuesday evenings just like this one. She turned when she heard me, her smile bright and easy. "Hey, honey, you're home early. Dinner's almost ready." I set my keys on the counter, placed my wallet next to them, and then I pulled out the bank statement and laid it between us like a card I never wanted to play. Her smile froze. Then, slowly, so slowly, it melted away. "David?" That's all she said, just my name. But in that one word, I heard everything. The guilt, the fear, the end of something that could never be repaired. I met Rachel Summers when I was 24 years old. She was working at the town library, shelving books in the mystery section, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. I'd gone in looking for a repair manual for my truck, and somehow ended up staying for 2 hours, pretending to browse while really just watching her work. She moved through those stacks like she belonged there, like books were old friends and she was visiting each one. When I finally worked up the courage to ask her about the manual, she laughed, not at me, but with genuine amusement, and said, "We don't really carry those, but the auto parts store on Main Street does. I could walk you over there if you want. I'm on my lunch break in 10 minutes. We were married 18 months later. Our wedding was small, just family and close friends in the backyard of her parents' house. Her father, Tom, walked her down a makeshift aisle between folding chairs, while her mother cried happy tears in the front row. My own parents had driven 8 hours from Ohio, and my dad pulled me aside before the ceremony started. "Son," he said, gripping my shoulder, "marriage isn't always easy, but if you've found a good woman, you hold on tight and you don't let go." I thought about those words a lot over the years. We started our life together in a small apartment above the hardware store downtown. Rachel kept working at the library. I was doing construction work then, framing houses and learning the trade from older men who'd been swinging hammers since before I was born. The work was hard, but honest. Every Friday, I'd bring my paycheck home, and we'd sit at our tiny kitchen table and figure out our budget together. Rachel was always good with numbers, better than me anyway. She had this little notebook, green with a worn cover, where she tracked every dollar: rent, groceries, utilities, savings. She'd write it all down in her neat handwriting, and at the end of each month, she'd show me how much we'd managed to put away. "Look, David," she said, pointing to the savings column, "another $200 this month. We're doing it. We're really doing it." We were saving for a house. That was the dream. A place of our own, with a yard and maybe a garden, somewhere we could raise a family, somewhere permanent. It took us 4 years, but we did it. The house on Maple Street wasn't fancy. It was a modest 3-bedroom with peeling paint and a roof that needed work. But it had good bones, as they say. And it had a big backyard with 2 oak trees that must have been 100 years old. Rachel fell in love with it the moment she saw it. "This is it," she said, standing in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through dusty windows. "This is our home." We moved in on a Saturday in April. Friends helped us carry boxes and furniture. Rachel's mother brought lasagna, and her father brought beer. We didn't have much. A couch we'd bought used, a dining table Rachel had refinished herself, our bed, and some odds and ends. But it was ours. That night, after everyone had gone home, Rachel and I sat on our back porch steps, looking up at the stars. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I put my arm around her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For this. For working so hard. For making our dream come true." I kissed the top of her head. We did it together. Our daughter Emma was born 2 years later. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Rachel's labor was long, nearly 20 hours, and I stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, telling her she was doing great even though I was terrified. When Emma finally arrived, small and red and screaming with life, the nurse placed her in Rachel's arms, and I watched my wife transform into something I'd never seen before: a mother. Rachel stayed home with Emma for the first few years. Money was tighter then. I'd started my own small construction business by that point, just me and 2 other guys, and we were building a reputation for good work and fair prices. But there were lean months when I wasn't sure we'd make the mortgage payment, months when Rachel would stretch a pot of soup across 3 dinners and never complain. "We're fine," she'd say when I worried out loud. "We have everything we need." And we did. We had each other. We had Emma. We had our little house on Maple Street with the oak trees out back. When Emma started kindergarten, Rachel went back to work part-time at the library. She loved it there. Loved helping people find books, loved the quiet rhythm of the place, loved being around stories. She'd come home and tell me about the patrons, old Mr. Henderson, who only read westerns, young Sarah Chen, who was working through every classic novel alphabetically, the group of teenagers who'd claimed the corner table for their homework sessions. "It's not just a job," she told me once. "It's being part of the community, being useful." I understood that. My work was the same way. Building someone's deck, repairing their front steps, adding a room for a growing family. It meant something. It was tangible. It lasted. Over the years, we fell into a comfortable pattern. I'd wake up at 5:30, make coffee, check the work schedule for the day. Rachel would get up around 6:30, make him his lunch, get her ready for school. We'd eat breakfast together when we could. Scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy. And then I'd head out to whatever job site needed me while Rachel drove Emma to school and went on to the library. Dinners were usually around 6. Rachel was a good cook. Not elaborate, but everything she made was warm and filling and tasted like home. Pot roast on Tuesdays, spaghetti on Wednesdays, chicken and vegetables on Thursdays. Friday was usually pizza night, a little treat for making it through the week. After dinner, I'd help Emma with her homework while Rachel cleaned up the kitchen. Then we'd watch TV together, or play board games, or just sit on the porch if the weather was nice. Simple evenings. Quiet evenings. The kind you don't appreciate until they're gone. Emma grew up faster than either of us wanted. Before we knew it, she was in middle school, then high school. Then she was talking about colleges and career plans and moving away. Rachel cried the night Emma got her acceptance letter to State University. "I'm happy for her," she said, wiping her eyes. "I am, but I'm gonna miss her so much." "Me too," I said, holding her close. "Me too." We started talking seriously about the future then, about what life would look like with Emma gone, about maybe traveling a bit. Rachel had always wanted to see Ireland. Her grandmother had been born there, and she'd grown up hearing stories about green hills and old castles and villages where everyone knew your name. "After Emma's wedding," Rachel would say, "after we get her settled, then we'll go, just you and me." So we started saving more intentionally. I took on extra jobs. Rachel picked up additional hours at the library. We cut back on small luxuries, eating out less, skipping the cable channels we never watched, making our cars last another year. It wasn't a sacrifice, it was an investment in our future. Every month I'd go to the bank and deposit money into our savings account. Every month I'd watch that number grow. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. It felt good. It felt like we were building something again. The way we'd built our house, our family, our life together. Rachel would check the account balance online sometimes, and she'd smile when she saw the number. "We're really doing it, David," she'd say, the same words she had used when we were young and saving for our first house. "We're gonna make it happen." I believed her. I believed in us. I believed that after 23 years of marriage, we knew each other completely. That there were no secrets between us, that the woman I'd fallen in love with in a library all those years ago was the same woman who slept beside me every night. I was wrong. The first sign that something was off came about 6 months before I found that bank statement. Emma was home from college for winter break, and the three of us were decorating the Christmas tree. Rachel was quieter than usual. Distracted. She'd hung the same ornament twice before she realized her mistake, then laughed it off and blamed it on being tired. Work's been busy. Lots of people using the library this time of year. I didn't think much of it then. But over the next few months, I started noticing other things. Rachel would spend more time on her phone, sometimes texting while we ate dinner. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say it was just her sister or a friend from work. She started going out more in the evenings, book club meetings, she said, or volunteer committee work for the library's fundraiser. "You're gone a lot lately," I mentioned one night, trying to keep my tone light. She smiled and kissed my cheek. "I know, I'm sorry. Things should slow down soon." But they didn't slow down. If anything, she was gone more often. And when she was home, she seemed absent. Like her body was there, but her mind was somewhere else. I told myself I was being paranoid, that marriage goes through phases, that after 23 years you can't expect every day to feel like your honeymoon, that Rachel was just busy, just stressed, just going through something I couldn't quite see. I trusted her. That's what marriage is, right? Trust. Then there were the clothes. Rachel had never been particularly interested in fashion. She wore comfortable things, jeans and sweaters, practical shoes, minimal makeup. But suddenly she was buying new outfits, brighter colors, more fitted styles. She started wearing perfume, something expensive that I'd never smelled on her before. "You look nice," I said one evening when she came downstairs in a new dress. "Thanks," she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "I just felt like trying something different." "Going somewhere?" "Just meeting Karen for dinner. We're planning the library fundraiser." Karen was her coworker. I'd met her a few times. Nice woman, married, with kids. Nothing unusual there. Except one night, about a week later, I ran into Karen at the grocery store. "Hey, David," she said warmly. "How's Rachel doing?" "Good. Busy with all the fundraiser planning." Karen looked confused. "Fundraiser? Oh, we finished that project last month. Raised almost $10,000. Rachel did a great job organizing it." I stood there in the produce aisle, holding a bag of apples, and felt the first real spike of doubt. "Right," I said slowly. "Must be thinking of something else." That night, when Rachel came home, I asked casually about her evening. "How was dinner with Karen?" "It was good," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We had Thai food." "What'd you two talk about?" "Oh, you know, work stuff, family stuff, nothing exciting." She was lying. I could feel it. But I didn't know what to do with that feeling. Do you confront your wife of 23 years based on a hunch? Based on a conversation in a grocery store and a feeling in your gut? I decided to let it go, to watch and wait. And then, 3 weeks later, I went to the bank to deposit my paycheck. The rest, as they say, is what brought me to that Tuesday afternoon in our kitchen holding a bank statement that showed our savings account had been drained to almost nothing. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Rachel stood frozen by the stove, the wooden spoon still in her hand, her face pale as chalk. The pot roast simmered behind her, filling the room with smells that suddenly made me feel sick. Everything about this moment felt wrong. The normalcy of dinner cooking, the evening light coming through the windows, the calendar on the wall with Emma's wedding date circled in red marker. "David," she said again, softer this time, "I can explain." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized my hands were shaking. I put them flat on the counter to steady myself. "Explain," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too calm, too even. "Okay, explain where $62,000 went." She set the spoon down carefully, like it might shatter if she moved too fast. Then she turned off the stove. The sudden silence when the burner clicked off was deafening. "Can we sit down?" she asked. "I don't want to sit down, Rachel. I want you to tell me what happened to our savings. The money we've been putting away for 15 years. The money for Emma's wedding. The money for our future." She wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when she was anxious or upset. Usually it made me want to comfort her. Now it just made me angry. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "For what to go this far?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked over to the kitchen table and sat down heavily in one of the chairs. I stayed where I was, leaning against the counter, the bank statement still in my hand. "There's someone else," she finally said. The words hung in the air like smoke. I heard them, I understood them, but my brain couldn't quite process what they meant. Someone else, after 23 years, after everything we'd built together. "What do you mean, someone else?" My voice was still calm, still steady, but something cold was spreading through my chest. "His name is Marcus," she said, and she wouldn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on her hands, folded in her lap. I met him 2 years ago at a library conference in the city. He's a consultant. He helps libraries with their digital systems. 2 years. She'd been lying to me for 2 years. And the money? I asked. She took a shaky breath. He was starting a business, a tech startup. He said if I invested early, I could triple the money, maybe more. He showed me projections, business plans. It all seemed so legitimate, David, so smart. I thought I was helping us. I thought I was making our future better. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A short, bitter sound that made her flinch. You thought you were helping us by taking our life savings and giving it to some guy you met at a conference without telling me? It wasn't like that, she said, and now there were tears on her cheeks. At first it was just a few thousand, just to test it out. And he was so knowledgeable, so confident. He said the company was about to take off, that early investors would make a fortune. Let me guess, I said. The company never took off. She shook her head. He kept saying it needed more capital, just a little more, just to get over the hump. And I believed him, David. I believed he was going to make it work, that I was going to surprise you with all this extra money, that we could do more than just go to Ireland. We could retire early, help Emma buy a house, finally live without worrying about money. I closed my eyes, tried to breathe, tried to understand how the woman I'd spent more than half my life with could do something like this. Were you sleeping with him? The question came out before I could stop it. She looked up sharply. No, God no, David. It wasn't like that. It was just, he paid attention to me. He made me feel smart, valued, like I was more than just a small-town librarian. He talked about big ideas, big plans. He made me feel like I could be part of something important. You were part of something important, I said, and my voice cracked. You're part of this family, this marriage, this life we built together. I know that, she sobbed. I know that now. But somehow, over the years, I'd started feeling invisible. Emma grew up and didn't need me the same way. You were always working, always busy with jobs, and I'm at the library shelving books and checking out DVDs and helping kids with their homework, and I wanted to feel like I mattered. I wanted to feel sympathy for her. Part of me did, but a bigger part of me was just so angry I could barely see straight. So you stole from us. She didn't steal, she said quickly. I invested. I thought, you stole, I repeated harder this time. You took money from our joint account without telling me. Money we saved together. Money that wasn't just yours to give away. That's theft, Rachel. I don't care what you call it. She put her face in her hands and cried. Real, body-shaking sobs, the kind I'd only seen a handful of times in our marriage. When her father died, when Emma had that scare with appendicitis, or when we lost the baby between trying for Emma and finally getting pregnant with her. I stood there and watched her cry and felt nothing. Or maybe I felt everything, and it was all too much to process. Betrayal, anger, confusion, grief for what we'd lost, fear for what came next. After a while, she looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. What happens now? She whispered. I don't know, I said, honestly. I need to think. I need to not be here right now. I grabbed my keys off the counter and walked toward the door. David, please, she called after me. Don't go. We need to talk about this. I turned back to look at her one more time. She was still sitting at the table, mascara running down her face, looking small and broken and like a stranger. We've been talking, or at least you've been talking. I've been listening to you explain how you gave away our future to some guy who made you feel special. I think I've heard enough for tonight. I left. got in my truck, drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just drove through our town, past familiar streets and houses where our friends lived, past the library where Rachel worked, past the elementary school where Emma had gone to kindergarten, past the church where we'd been married. Everything looked the same as it always did, but nothing would ever be the same again. I ended up at Joe's Diner on the edge of town. It was nearly empty, just a couple of truckers at the counter and an older woman in a corner booth. I sat at a table by the window and ordered coffee I didn't drink. My phone buzzed constantly, text after text from Rachel. "Please come home. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. I love you. Please, David." I turned the phone face down and stared out the window. Helen, the waitress who'd worked at Joe's for her as long as I could remember, came over to refill my cup, even though I hadn't touched it. "You okay, honey?" she asked quietly. I looked up at her. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. She'd probably served me 100 times over in the years. Had brought Rachel and me pie on our anniversary once, on the house. "Not really," I said. She patted my shoulder. "Whatever it is, it'll work out. It always does, one way or another." I wish I could believe that. I stayed at the diner until they closed at 10. Then I drove around some more. Past midnight, I finally pulled into the parking lot of a small motel off the highway, the kind of place where truckers stay for a night and nobody asks questions. The room was clean but depressing. A saggy bed, a TV bolted to the wall, a bathroom with a dripping faucet. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the loss, the stupidity of trusting so completely that I never thought to check our savings account. The reality that my marriage of 23 years had been built on a lie, at least for the last 2 years. I thought about Emma, about how excited she was for her wedding, about how we'd promised to pay for it, about how I was going to have to tell her that her mother had given away the money to some con artist who'd made her feel important. I thought about my dad's words on my wedding day. "If you've found a good woman, you hold on tight and you don't let go." Had I found a good woman? Or had I been holding on to someone who didn't exist anymore? I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in the dark and listened to trucks rumble past on the highway and tried to figure out what to do next. Around 5 in the morning, my phone rang. Rachel. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, she called again, then again. On the 4th call, I answered. "What?" My voice was rough from not sleeping, from holding back emotion all night. "Thank God," she breathed. "I've been so worried. Where are you?" "Motel off Route 40. David, please come home. We need to talk about this properly. We need to figure out how to fix it." "I don't know if it can be fixed, Rachel." "Don't say that," she said, and she was crying again. "Please don't say that. I made a terrible mistake, a huge, stupid mistake, but we can get through this. People get through worse things. We can—" "Did you ever try to get the money back?" I interrupted. She was quiet for a moment. "What?" "The money you gave Marcus. When you realized it wasn't working out, did you try to get it back?" Yes, of course, but he said it was tied up in the business, that he couldn't just pull it out without destroying the company. And you believed him." "I didn't know what else to do." "You could have told me," I said. "At any point over the last 2 years, you could have told me what was happening. We could have dealt with it together. We could have gone to the police, hired a lawyer, done something. But instead, you kept lying. Kept feeding our savings to this guy who'd made you feel important." "I was ashamed," she whispered. I was so ashamed, David, and I kept thinking I could fix it before you found out that somehow I could make it right. Well, you didn't fix it, and now we have less than $1,000 in savings, and our daughter's getting married in 6 months, and we have no way to pay for it. We'll figure something out, she said desperately. We can take out a loan, I'm not taking out a loan to fix your mistake, I said flatly. I'm 50 years old, Rachel. I was supposed to be thinking about retirement, not about how to rebuild savings we already had. I've been working 60-hour weeks for years, breaking my back on job sites, and for what? So you could give it all away to some guy who'd made you feel special? I know, she sobbed. I know I destroyed everything. I know you probably hate me right now. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her that I did hate her, that I'd never forgive her, that it was over. But I couldn't, because underneath all the anger and betrayal, there was still something else. Some stubborn part of me that remembered the girl in the library, the woman who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, the mother who'd stayed up all night when Emma had the flu, singing to her until she fell asleep. I don't hate you, I said quietly, but I don't trust you anymore, and I don't know if I can live with someone I don't trust. So what are you saying? You want a divorce? The word hung there between us. Divorce. After 23 years, after everything we'd been through together. I don't know what I want, I admitted. I need time, space. I need to figure out if there's anything left to save. Okay, she said, her voice small. Okay, take whatever time you need. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. I hung up and sat there in that depressing motel room as the sun came up, wondering how everything had fallen apart so completely. I stayed at that motel for 3 days. 3 days of staring at the ceiling, ordering takeout I barely ate, and trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. Rachel texted constantly. I'd answer once or twice a day just to let her know I was okay. But I wasn't ready to go home. Wasn't ready to face her. Wasn't ready to figure out what our life looked like now. On the 4th morning, Emma called. I stared at her name on my phone screen for a long moment before answering. Rachel must have told her something, but I didn't know what. "Dad?" she said, her voice tight with worry. "Hey, sweetheart." "What's going on? Mom called me last night crying. She wouldn't tell me what happened, just kept saying she messed up and that you'd left. Are you guys okay?" I closed my eyes. Of course Rachel had called Emma. Of course she was scared and looking for support. But now I had to decide what to tell our daughter, how much of her mother's betrayal to reveal. "Your mom and I are having some problems," I said carefully. "We're working through them." "Dad, don't do that. Don't give me the parent answer. I'm 22 years old. Just tell me what's happening." So I did. I told her about the savings account, about Marcus, about the lies that had lasted 2 years. I tried to keep my voice calm, factual, but I could hear the anger creeping in despite my efforts. Emma was silent for a long time after I finished. "Dad," she finally said, her voice shaky with worry. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have anything to be sorry for." "But the wedding, the money was for my wedding." "Don't worry about the wedding," I said quickly. "We'll figure something out. This isn't your burden to carry." "How can I not worry about it? Mom took the money that was supposed to pay for my wedding and gave it to some random guy? What was she thinking?" "I don't know, honey. I really don't." "Do you want me to come home? I can drive down this weekend. Talk to Mom, help you guys work through this?" "No," I said firmly. "You stay at school. Focus on your classes, your life. Your mom and I will figure this out." But after we hung up, I sat there wondering if that was true. Could we figure this out? Or had Rachel broken something that couldn't be repaired? That afternoon, I finally checked out of the motel and drove back home. Rachel's car was in the driveway. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, gathering courage before going inside. She was at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her. When she heard the door, she looked up, and I saw she'd aged years in just a few days. Her eyes were hollow, her face drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." I set my keys on the counter, the same spot where I'd put them 4 days ago, right before pulling out that bank statement. The pot roast she'd been making was gone. The kitchen was cleaner than usual, like she'd been scrubbing it obsessively. "I've been trying to figure out what we can do," she said, gesturing at the papers. "I called a lawyer this morning, about Marcus, to see if we have any legal recourse." I walked over and looked at what she'd printed out. Articles about investment fraud, information about filing complaints with the state attorney general, a list of lawyers who handled financial crimes. What did the lawyer say? "It's complicated. Marcus structured everything to look legitimate. Contracts, receipts, official business documents. He's been doing this for a while, apparently. I'm not his only victim, but proving fraud is difficult, and even if we could, there's no guarantee we'd get any money back. He's probably already spent it or moved it offshore." She looked up at me with desperate eyes. "But I'm going to try, David. I'm going to pursue every option. I'm going to fix this." I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "Rachel, even if you somehow got the money back, which seems unlikely, that doesn't fix what you did. You lied to me for 2 years. You made major financial decisions without me. You betrayed my trust in a way I never thought possible." "I know I did," she whispered. "I know I did, and I hate myself for it. Every second of every day, I hate myself for it." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "That's what I keep coming back to. When you first gave him money, when you started having doubts, when you realized it might be a scam, why didn't you just tell me?" She was quiet for a long moment, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. It was a habit she had for years whenever she was nervous or thinking hard about something. "At first," she said slowly, "I didn't tell you because I thought it was going to work. I thought I was being smart, making a good investment. I wanted to surprise you, to prove that I wasn't just a librarian who shelved books, that I could be savvy, business-minded, someone who could help us get ahead." "And later?" "Later, when I started realizing something was wrong, I was terrified. Terrified of what you'd think of me. Terrified of disappointing you. Terrified of admitting I'd been stupid and gullible and had destroyed everything we worked for. So I kept hoping it would turn around, that somehow Marcus would deliver on his promises, and I'd never have to tell you." "But you did have to tell me. Or rather, I found out. And now, here we are." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I would do anything to go back and make different choices. Anything, David, but I can't. All I can do is try to make it right going forward." I looked at her, this woman I'd known for more than half my life, and tried to see past my anger, to understand what had really happened. She'd felt invisible, unimportant, and when someone came along and made her feel seen, made her feel valued, she grabbed onto it without thinking about the consequences. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but maybe it explained it. "I need you to understand something," I said. "This isn't just about the money. Money can be earned back. It'll take time, but it's possible. What's harder is rebuilding trust, And I don't know if I can do that, Rachel. I don't know if I can ever look at you again without wondering what else you might be hiding, what other secrets you might be keeping. I'm not hiding anything else, she said urgently. I swear to you, David, this was it. This was my only secret, and it was eating me alive. I hated lying to you, hated making excuses for where I was going, what I was doing with the money. It made me sick every single day. Then why did you keep doing it? Because I was in too deep. Because I didn't know how to climb out of the hole I'd dug. Because every time I thought about telling you, I imagined this exact moment. Seeing the hurt in your eyes, knowing I'd destroyed your trust, watching our marriage fall apart. And I was a coward, David. I chose to keep lying rather than face the consequences of the truth. There was something raw and honest in her voice that made me believe her. Not about Marcus, not about the money, but about the fear, about the shame, about the desperate hope that somehow it would all work out. But belief wasn't enough. Understanding wasn't enough. I'm going to sleep in the guest room, I said, standing up. For now, we live in the same house, but we're not okay. We're not back to normal. I don't know what we are. Okay, she said, nodding quickly. Whatever you need, whatever time you need. I started toward the stairs, then stopped. There was something else I needed to know. This Marcus guy, I said without turning around. Do you still talk to him? No, God, no. Once I realized what he'd done, once I finally admitted to myself that it was all a scam, I stopped answering his calls, blocked his number. He tried reaching out through email for a while, always with excuses about why the business was delayed, why he needed more time, but I ignored all of it. When was the last time you heard from him? About 3 weeks ago. He sent one final email saying the company had folded, that he was sorry, that he'd done everything he could, but sometimes businesses fail. Like it was all just bad luck and bad timing, instead of fraud. 3 weeks ago. Which meant Rachel had known the money was gone, that it wasn't coming back, and she'd still kept it from me. She'd sat across from me at dinner, had kissed me goodnight, had talked about Emma's wedding and our trip to Ireland, all while knowing our savings had vanished. Okay, I said, and went upstairs to the guest room. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I lived like polite strangers. We'd pass each other in the hallway, exchange basic information about bills or schedules, eat dinner at the same table while barely speaking. She was trying to give me space, and I was trying to figure out if space was enough, if time could heal something this broken. I threw myself into work, took on extra jobs, stayed late on sites, sometimes not coming home until after dark. The physical labor felt good. It was straightforward. You frame a wall, you build a deck, you fix what's broken. If only marriage worked the same way. My crew noticed I was different, quieter. Jake, who'd worked with me for 10 years, finally asked if everything was okay. Wife trouble, I said simply, and he nodded and didn't push. Rachel kept pursuing the legal angle with Marcus. She filed a complaint with the state attorney general. She found other victims through online forums and connected with a lawyer who was considering a class action suit. She sent me updates via text, always professional, always hopeful that we might recover something. But I knew better. Guys like Marcus didn't keep money sitting around waiting to be recovered. He'd moved on to his next victim, his next scam, and our savings were gone forever. Emma came home one weekend, about 3 weeks after I'd found out. I picked her up from the bus station, and we drove home in silence for a while, before she finally spoke. "How bad is it?" she asked quietly. "Pretty bad." "Are you going to divorce her?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I don't know." "Do you want to?" "Some days," I admitted. "Some days I'm so angry I can barely stand to be in the same room with her. Other days, I remember who she was before all this, who we were together. And I wonder if that's still worth fighting for. She really messed up, Emma said. Yeah, she really did. But she's still my mom, and you're still my dad, and I don't want to have to choose between you at my wedding. I looked over at her, my daughter, 22 years old and already having to navigate her parents' broken marriage. You won't have to choose, I promised. Whatever happens between your mom and me, we both love you. That doesn't change. That weekend was awkward. Emma tried to act normal, but the tension in the house was impossible to ignore. Rachel cooked Emma's favorite meals. I helped Emma plan parts of the wedding that didn't require money. We all pretended we were fine until Emma finally broke down Sunday night before heading back to school. I hate this, she cried. I hate that Mom did this. I hate that you're so sad. I hate that my wedding is causing all this stress. Maybe I should just cancel it. Don't you dare, Rachel said fiercely, pulling Emma into a hug. Your wedding is going to happen. We'll make it happen somehow. This is my mistake, not yours. We'll figure it out, I added, and meant it. Whatever else was broken, we wouldn't let this ruin Emma's wedding. After Emma left, the house felt even emptier than before. I was sitting on the back porch that evening, watching the sun set over the oak trees, when Rachel came out and sat on the steps beside me. Not too close, respectful of the space between us. I got an email today, she said after a while, from one of Marcus's other victims, a woman in Michigan who lost almost $80,000. She's been working with the FBI on a wire fraud case. I looked over at her. The FBI? Apparently Marcus operated across state lines, which makes it federal. They're building a case, but it takes time, maybe years, and even then there's no guarantee. So we're never getting the money back? Probably not, she admitted. I mean, I'll keep trying, I'll do everything I can, but realistically, David, we have to accept that it's gone. We sat in silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to dark. I got a second job, Rachel said quietly. Evenings at the bookstore downtown. And I'm selling some of my things, jewelry, some furniture from my mom's house that I inherited. It won't be enough for Emma's wedding, but it's a start. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I have to do something. I can't just sit here and let you carry all the weight of fixing what I broke. More silence. Crickets started chirping in the yard. David, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Is there any chance you can forgive me? Not now, maybe, but someday. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Could I forgive her for lying? For betraying my trust? For giving away our future to a con man? Could I forgive her for making me doubt everything I thought I knew about our marriage? Could I forgive her for breaking my heart? I don't know, I said, honestly. I want to. Part of me wants to just say it's okay, we'll move forward, we'll rebuild. But every time I think about it, I get angry all over again, and I don't know how to let go of that anger. I understand, she said. I do. I needed to ask. She stood up to go back inside, then paused. For what it's worth, she said. You deserved better. You deserved a wife who was honest with you, who valued what you built together, who didn't throw it all away for a stranger's empty promises. I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough, but I am. I'm so sorry. Then she went inside, leaving me alone with the darkness and the crickets and the weight of deciding what came next. That night, lying in the guest room bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything Rachel had said, about her working 2 jobs to try to make it right, about her pursuing legal action, even though it probably wouldn't lead anywhere, about her selling her mother's jewelry, pieces I knew meant the world to her. She was trying, in her own way. She was trying to fix the unfixable. But was that enough? Around 2 in the morning, I got out of bed and went downstairs for water. As I passed the master bedroom, I heard crying. Soft, muffled sobs that Rachel was clearly trying to keep quiet. I stood outside the door for a long moment, my hand raised to knock, to go in, to comfort her the way I'd done 1,000 times over the years. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I went back to the guest room and stared at the ceiling until morning came. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, almost 2 months after I'd found that bank statement. I was at work, framing a new addition to the Henderson house, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this David Patterson?" A woman's voice, professional. "Yes." "This is Agent Sarah Morrison with the FBI. I'm calling about Marcus Chen and a financial fraud investigation. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" I climbed down from the ladder and walked away from the noise of the construction site. "What about Marcus Chen?" "I understand your wife, Rachel Patterson, was one of his victims. She filed reports with local law enforcement and the state attorney general's office. Those reports were forwarded to us as part of a larger investigation." "Okay," I said slowly. "Mr. Patterson, I want to be upfront with you. Marcus Chen has been running investment scams for about 5 years. We've identified at least 37 victims across 12 states. The total fraud amount is somewhere around $2.3 million. I leaned against my truck, feeling sick. "We arrested Mr. Chen this morning in Nevada. He's being charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. The case is strong. We have extensive documentation, multiple victim testimonies, and financial records that clearly show a pattern of fraud." That's good, I guess." "There's something else," Agent Morrison said. "When we arrested Mr. Chen, we seized his assets. It's not the full amount of what he stole, but we recovered approximately $400,000 from various accounts. That money will be distributed to victims through the court system." My heart started beating faster. "How much could we get back?" "It depends on several factors: how much you lost, how the court decides to allocate the funds, how many victims file claims. But based on the amount your wife reported losing, you could potentially recover 30 to 40%, maybe more if some victims don't file claims." 30 to 40% of $62,000. That would be around $20,000. Not everything we'd lost, but something. Enough to help with Emma's wedding. Enough to start rebuilding. "When would we know?" I asked. "These things take time, probably 6 months to a year. But I wanted you to know that there's hope, that your wife's persistence in reporting this, in gathering documentation, in connecting with other victims, that made a difference. It helped us build a case strong enough to make arrests." After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time, rain drumming on the roof. Rachel had kept fighting. Even when she knew I was angry with her, even when our marriage was hanging by a thread, even when it seemed hopeless, she'd kept pursuing justice, not just for herself, but for all of Marcus's victims. I thought about her working 2 jobs, selling her mother's jewelry, filing complaints and making calls and refusing to let Marcus get away with what he'd done. I thought about 23 years of marriage, of building a life together, of raising a daughter, of all the good years before these terrible months. and I thought about forgiveness, about whether it was possible, about whether I wanted it to be possible. When I got home that evening, Rachel was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked tired. She always looked tired now, between 2 jobs and the stress of everything. "Rachel," I said.
Our first marriage counseling session was on a Tuesday evening. The therapist's office was in a converted house on Oak Street, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that were supposed to make you feel at ease. But I felt anything but easy as Rachel and I sat on the couch, careful to leave space between us, while Dr. Patricia Reeves looked at us with patient, knowing eyes. "So," she said, settling into her chair with a notepad, "tell me why you're here." Rachel looked at me. I looked at the floor. Finally, I spoke. "My wife gave away our life savings to a con man and lied to me about it for 2 years." Dr. Reeves didn't flinch. "Rachel, is that accurate?" "Yes," Rachel said quietly. "That's accurate." "And David, why did you decide to try counseling instead of ending the marriage?" I thought about that question. Really thought about it. "Because 23 years is a long time to throw away," I said finally. "Because we have a daughter who's getting married, and I don't want her day ruined by her parents being divorced. Because some part of me, maybe a stupid part, still loves the woman I married, even if I don't trust her anymore." "That's not stupid," Dr. Reeves said gently. "Love and trust are different things. You can love someone and not trust them. Rebuilding trust is what we're going to work on here. But I need to know, are you both committed to this process? Because it's going to be hard. It's going to require complete honesty, even when that honesty is painful." "I'm committed," Rachel said immediately. "Whatever it takes." "David?" I looked at Rachel, at the woman who'd broken my heart, at the woman who was working 2 jobs trying to fix her mistake, at the woman who'd filed reports and made calls and helped put a criminal behind bars. "I'm here," I said. "That's the best I can do right now." "That's enough," Dr. Reeves said. "That's a start." Over the next few months, we went to counseling every week. Some sessions were brutal. Dr. Reeves made us talk about things I wanted to avoid. How I'd felt when I found that bank statement. What Rachel had been thinking each time she transferred money to Marcus. How we'd both contributed to the distance that had grown between us over the years. "Rachel," Dr. Reeves said during our 3rd session, "you mentioned feeling invisible in your marriage. Can you tell me more about that?" She shifted uncomfortably. "It's hard to explain. David worked so much and he was so focused on providing for us, which I appreciated, but somewhere along the way we stopped really seeing each other. We'd have dinner and talk about Emma or bills or what needed to be fixed around the house, but we never talked about us, about our dreams or fears or what we wanted from life." "David, how do you respond to that?" I sighed. "I guess I thought I was showing love by working hard, by making sure we had everything we needed. I didn't realize she needed more than that." "Both of those things can be true," Dr. Reeves said. "David, you were showing love through providing. Rachel, you needed emotional connection. Neither of you is wrong, but you stopped communicating about what you needed from each other." It was hard to hear, hard to accept that I'd played some role in creating the distance that had made Rachel vulnerable to Marcus's manipulation. But it was true. In one particularly difficult session, Dr. Reeves asked Rachel to explain exactly what had attracted her to Marcus. "It wasn't physical," she said, glancing at me nervously. "I need you to understand that, David. I never touched him, never even thought about it."
Then what was it? I asked. He listened, she said simply. We'd talk about books, about ideas, about the world beyond our small town. He asked me questions about myself, not about Emma or you or my day-to-day life, but about me, what I thought of things, what my opinions were, and when I shared them, he acted like they mattered, like I was intelligent and interesting and worth paying attention to. And I didn't make you feel that way? I said flatly. You did, once. But over the years, we fell into a routine. And in that routine, I think we both forgot to really see each other. Dr. Reeves leaned forward. Here's what I'm hearing. Rachel, you felt unseen and unvalued. And when someone offered you attention and validation, you grabbed onto it. You made a terrible decision, multiple terrible decisions, because you were trying to fill a void. David, you were focused on providing and building security, which are important forms of love, but you missed that Rachel needed emotional intimacy too. Does that sound right? We both nodded. Moving forward, Dr. Reeves continued, both of you need to communicate more openly about what you need. Rachel, you need to tell David when you're feeling disconnected instead of looking for connection elsewhere. David, you need to make time for your wife beyond the practical day-to-day. Can you both commit to that? Yes, Rachel said. I can try, I said. Trying is enough, Dr. Reeves said, for now. Slowly, so slowly I barely noticed it happening, things started to change. I moved back into our bedroom after about 6 weeks of counseling. The first night felt awkward and strange, like we were teenagers figuring out how to be close to someone. We lay on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to touch, until Rachel finally whispered into the darkness. Thank you for coming back. I'm still angry sometimes, I said honestly. I know, you have every right to be. But I miss you. I miss us. I felt her hand reach across the space between us, tentative, asking permission. I took it and squeezed gently. We fell asleep holding hands that night. It wasn't much, but it was something. Rachel quit her evening job at the bookstore after 2 months when I pointed out that she was exhausting herself and we needed her healthy more than we needed the extra money. But Emma's wedding, she started. We'll figure out Emma's wedding, I said firmly. Together, like we should have been doing all along. We sat down with Emma over Christmas break and had an honest conversation about the wedding budget. Here's where we are, I told her, spreading out papers on the kitchen table. We have about $8,000 saved up between what we put away in the last few months and what Mom recovered from selling some things. The FBI says we'll probably get another $15,000 to $20,000 back from Marcus's seized assets, but that won't come through until after the wedding. So we have $8,000 total? Emma asked. We have $8,000 guaranteed, Rachel said. But honey, we're going to make this work. We'll just have to be creative. Emma looked at both of us, and I saw her mother's strength in her eyes. You know what? I don't need a huge wedding. I never did. Michael and I just want to get married and celebrate with the people we love. We can do that with $8,000. Are you sure? Rachel asked, tears in her eyes. I'm sure. Besides, half the weddings I've been to, people spend a fortune on fancy decorations and expensive food, and nobody even remembers it a month later. What matters is the marriage, not the wedding. My daughter, 22 years old and wiser than both her parents combined. We planned a simple ceremony for April in our backyard under the oak trees. Emma's friends helped make decorations. Rachel's sister offered to make the cake. I built an arbor for them to stand under during the ceremony. The church ladies from town volunteered to handle the catering at cost. It wouldn't be the grand wedding we'd originally imagined, but it would be ours. It would be real. It would be filled with love instead of debt. The money situation improved slowly.
I continued taking extra work when I could, but I also made sure to be home for dinner at least 4 nights a week. Rachel and I started having date nights. Nothing fancy, just walks around town or coffee at the diner, but time when we could talk without the TV on or phones buzzing or chores calling our names. "Tell me something I don't know about you," I said one evening as we walked past the library where we'd first met. Rachel thought about it. "I've always wanted to learn to paint. Not seriously or anything, just for fun. But I never had the time or the confidence to try." "Why not?" "I don't know. Life got busy. And I think part of me was afraid I'd be bad at it and it would just be another thing I failed at. The community center offers painting classes on Thursday nights. Maybe you should sign up." She looked at me surprised. "You'd be okay with that?" "Rachel, I want you to do things that make you happy. I want you to feel like you matter and you're more than just someone's wife or mother or the librarian. You are those things, but you're also your own person with your own interests and dreams. I'm sorry I forgot that." She squeezed my hand. "I forgot it too, but I'm remembering now." She signed up for the painting class. Every Thursday, she'd come home with paint under her fingernails and a smile on her face, excited to show me what she'd created. Her paintings weren't masterpieces. She was the first to admit that, but they were hers, and they made her happy. In return, I started coming home earlier. Started actually being present when we spent time together, instead of mentally running through work schedules or worrying about bills. Started asking her about her day and really listening to the answer. One evening in February, we were cooking dinner together, something we'd started doing as a way to spend more time connecting, when Rachel suddenly stopped chopping vegetables and looked at me. "David, there's something I need to tell you." My heart clenched. "Not again. Please, not another secret." "What?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Marcus's trial is next month. The prosecutor wants me to testify, to talk about how he approached me, what he promised, how he convinced me to invest. They think my story is particularly compelling because of how long it went on." I set down the pan I was holding. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," she admitted. "I'll have to stand up in court and admit to everyone what I did, how stupid I was, how I fell for his lies." "You weren't stupid," she said. "You were vulnerable. There's a difference." "Do you really believe that?" I thought about it. Did I? "Yeah, I do. Marcus was a professional con artist. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make people trust him. What happened to you happened to dozens of other people. Smart, capable people who weren't stupid. They were just human." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Will you come with me? To the trial?" "Of course," I said, without hesitation. "You won't have to face him alone." The trial was held in the federal courthouse downtown on a cold morning in March. Rachel wore a simple navy dress and clutched my hand as we walked through security and found our way to the courtroom. I'd never been inside a courthouse before, and the formal setting, the judge's bench, the jury box, the American flag in the corner, made everything feel more real, more serious. Marcus was already there when we entered, sitting with his lawyers at the defense table. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with dark hair and an expensive suit. He looked confident, unbothered, like this was all just a minor inconvenience. I felt Rachel tense beside me when she saw him. "That's him," she whispered. I squeezed her hand. "I've got you." The trial lasted 3 days. We sat through testimonies from other victims, a retired teacher who'd lost his pension, a young couple who'd given Marcus their house down payment, an elderly widow who'd invested her late husband's life insurance money. Each story was heartbreaking. Each person had believed Marcus's promises. Each person had trusted him. When it was Rachel's turn to testify, I watched her walk to the witness stand with her head held high. She looked small up there, vulnerable, but also stronger than I'd given her credit for. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Miss Chen, asked Rachel to tell her story. Rachel spoke clearly, honestly. She explained how she'd met Marcus at the conference, how he'd been charming and knowledgeable, how he'd gradually convinced her to invest, how the amounts had grown over time, how she'd kept it secret from me. "Why didn't you tell your husband?" Miss Chen asked. Rachel looked at me in the gallery. "Because I was ashamed. Because I'd made a terrible mistake and I didn't know how to fix it. Because I kept hoping Marcus would make good on his promises and I'd never have to admit what I'd done." "And when did you realize Mr. Chen was defrauding you?" "When he stopped returning my calls, when the business website disappeared, when I finally admitted to myself that everything he'd told me was a lie." Marcus's lawyer tried to make Rachel look foolish during cross-examination, tried to suggest she should have known better, should have done more research, should have involved her husband. "Miss Patterson," he said condescendingly, "isn't it true that you never asked to see actual financial statements, never visited the supposed company offices, never did any due diligence before handing over your life savings?" "Yes," Rachel said quietly, "all of that is true. I trusted him. That was my mistake." "So you admit you were negligent?" "I admit I was trusting, and he exploited that trust. That's why we're here, isn't it? Because he's very good at making people trust him." The lawyer didn't have a response to that. After 3 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. "Guilty on all counts." I watched Marcus's face as the verdict was read. For the first time, his confidence cracked. He looked shocked, almost betrayed, like he couldn't believe the system had actually held him accountable. Rachel cried when we left the courthouse. Not sad tears, but something like relief. "It's really over," she said. "He can't hurt anyone else now." "No," I agreed. "He can't." On the drive home, Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Thank you for being there, for supporting me even after everything I did. We're in this together. That's what marriage means. Even when it's hard, even when one of us messes up, we face it together." She reached over and took my hand. That night we made love for the first time since I'd found out about the money. It was tentative at first, both of us uncertain, both of us carrying the weight of everything that had happened. But it was also familiar, comfortable, real. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Rachel's head on my chest, I realized something had shifted. The anger that had been sitting in my chest for months was finally starting to dissolve. Not completely. I don't know if it would ever be completely gone, but enough that I could breathe easier. "I love you," Rachel whispered. "I know I don't deserve it, but I still love you." "I love you too," I said, and I meant it. Emma's wedding day arrived on a Saturday in April, exactly a year after I'd found that bank statement. The weather cooperated, sunny and mild with a light breeze that rustled the oak trees in our backyard. Emma looked beautiful in a simple dress she'd found at a consignment shop, her hair decorated with flowers that Rachel had helped her arrange that morning. Michael, her fiancé, stood under the arbor I'd built, looking nervous and happy, and exactly like a young man should look on his wedding day. Our backyard was full of family and friends, maybe 70 people total, sitting in folding chairs we'd borrowed from the church. The decorations were simple, white ribbons and flowers that Rachel and Emma had arranged themselves, string lights that would come on when the sun set, mason jars with candles that Emma's friends had painted. It wasn't a grand wedding we had originally planned. But as I walked Emma down the makeshift aisle between those folding chairs, I realized it was perfect. It was intimate. It was personal. It was exactly what a wedding should be, a celebration of love surrounded by people who mattered.
Rachel was crying in the front row, happy tears this time. I caught her eye as I handed Emma over to Michael, and she smiled at me. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in over a year. After the ceremony, we had dinner under a tent in the backyard. Barbecue from a local restaurant, salads that neighbors had contributed, the beautiful cake Rachel's sister had made. People mingled and laughed and celebrated, and nobody seemed to notice or care that it wasn't an expensive, elaborate affair. During the father-daughter dance, Emma hugged me tight. "Thank you, Dad, for everything. For making this day happen, for working through things with Mom, for showing me what real commitment looks like." "You don't have to thank me," I said. "This is what parents do." "No," she said firmly, "not all parents. Some parents would have given up. You didn't. That means everything." As the sun set and the string lights came on, I found Rachel standing by herself near the back of the yard, watching the young people dance. "Hey," I said, coming to stand beside her. "Hey," she said, smiling. "It turned out pretty good, didn't it?" "It turned out perfect." "I was so worried," she admitted. "So worried that I'd ruined everything. Emma's wedding, our marriage, our future. But standing here watching her dance with her new husband, seeing everyone happy and celebrating, I think maybe we're going to be okay." "We are going to be okay. It took a while to get here, but we made it." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "The FBI called yesterday. The final distribution of Marcus's seized assets came through. We're getting $22,000 back." "That's more than they thought." "Some of the victims didn't file claims, so the money got divided among those of us who did." She paused. "What should we do with it?" I thought about it. $22,000. Not the $62,000 we'd lost, but still significant. We put half in savings, rebuild our emergency fund, make sure we're secure. And the other half? Maybe we finally take that trip to Ireland, just you and me, like we always talked about. Rachel pulled back to look at me. "Really? You'd still want to do that with me?" "Yeah," I said, "I really would. We've been through hell this past year, Rachel. We've done the hard work of rebuilding trust. I think we've earned a celebration, don't you?" She kissed me then, there in our backyard, under the oak trees, with our daughter's wedding reception happening around us and string lights twinkling overhead. "I love you, David Patterson, and I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret giving me a second chance." "I don't regret it," I said honestly. "Not anymore." We stood there together, watching our daughter dance, and I realized something important. The money Marcus had stolen hadn't just been dollars in an account. It had represented our dreams, our security, our future. When he took it, it felt like he had taken everything. But he hadn't, really. He'd taken our savings, but not our ability to earn more. He'd taken our sense of security, but not our capacity to rebuild it. He'd tested our marriage, but not destroyed it. What we'd lost was terrible. What Rachel had done was wrong. But what we'd gained, through counseling, through honesty, through the hard work of forgiveness, was something stronger than what we'd had before. We knew each other better now. We communicated more openly. We didn't take each other for granted. We were broken, but we chose to heal. And standing there in our backyard on our daughter's wedding day, I understood that sometimes the breaking is what allows you to become whole again. 3 months after Emma's wedding, Rachel and I stood on a hillside in County Clare, Ireland, looking out over the cliffs of Moher. The wind was strong, carrying the smell of salt and sea. Below us, waves crashed against ancient rock formations that had stood for millennia. The sky was that particular shade of gray that Ireland does so well. Not quite stormy, but not quite clear either. Just moody and beautiful,
and exactly what we'd imagined all those years ago when we first started dreaming about this trip. "We made it," Rachel said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "We did," I agreed. She slipped her hand into mine, and we stood there in silence, watching the ocean and thinking about everything it had taken to get here. The trip had been Rachel's idea, actually. After the wedding, after the money from Marcus's assets came through, she'd brought it up again tentatively, like she wasn't sure she deserved it. "I know we said we'd go," she'd said one evening, "but if you'd rather use that money for something else, I understand." "We're going," I'd told her firmly. "We've earned this, both of us." So we'd booked flights and a small bed and breakfast in a village whose name I couldn't pronounce. We'd rented a car and spent a week driving along narrow country roads, stopping in small towns, visiting old castles and talking, always talking. We talked about the past year, the pain of it, the lessons from it, the growth that had come from nearly losing everything. We talked about Emma and how proud we were of the woman she'd become. We talked about our future, not just the big dreams, but the small, everyday things we wanted to make sure we didn't take for granted anymore. "I want us to keep having date nights," Rachel said one evening over dinner at a pub in Galway. "Even when life gets busy again, even when it feels like we don't have time, I want us to keep making time for each other." Agreed. And I want to keep going to counseling, not forever maybe, but for a while longer, to make sure we stay on track. Deal. Now, standing on these cliffs at the edge of the world, I thought about how far we'd come. A year ago, I'd been standing in our kitchen with a bank statement that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I'd been so angry, so hurt, so certain that what Rachel had done was unforgivable. And maybe it should have been unforgivable. Other people might have divorced, might have walked away and never looked back. I wouldn't have blamed them. But somewhere in the anger and pain, I'd made a choice. Not to forgive immediately, that came later, but at least to try. To see if the woman I'd loved for 23 years was still in there somewhere, underneath the mistakes and lies. And she was. She'd never stopped being there. She'd just gotten lost for a while, searching for something she thought was missing, when really it had been there all along. "What are you thinking about?" Rachel asked, turning to look at me. "Us," I said. "How we almost lost each other. How close we came to throwing away 23 years over money." "It wasn't just about money," she said quietly. "It was about trust, about honesty, about seeing each other for who we really are." "I know. But standing here now, knowing what we went through to get here, I don't know. It feels important somehow, like we passed a test we didn't know we were taking." Rachel was quiet for a moment, watching the waves. Then she said, "Dr. Reeves told me something in one of our individual sessions. She said that sometimes the things that almost destroy a marriage are the same things that make it stronger in the end. That going through fire together can forge something that's harder to break." "Do you believe that?" I asked. "I do now. A year ago, I wouldn't have. I thought I'd destroyed us completely. But we did the work, David. We were honest, we went to counseling, we learned how to really communicate again. And now we're here, on the other side of it, and I feel like I know you better than I ever did before." "I feel the same way," I admitted. "Even with everything that happened, or maybe because of everything that happened, I feel closer to you now than I have in years." We stayed on those cliffs for a long time until the wind grew too cold and we had to retreat to the warmth of our rental car. On the drive back to our bed and breakfast, Rachel was quiet. I could tell she was thinking about something, working through it in her mind the way she always did. "What is it?" I finally asked. "I was just thinking about all the people Marcus hurt.
All the victims at the trial. That widow who lost her husband's life insurance. The young couple who lost their house down payment. All of us who trusted him and paid the price. What about them? I hope they're okay. I hope they found ways to heal like we did. Because it's not just about the money, is it? It's about the betrayal, the shame of being fooled, the damage it does to your ability to trust. You can't carry that for everyone, I said gently. You can only work on healing yourself. I know, but I think when we get home, I want to reach out to some of the other victims, maybe start a support group or something, help people who've been through financial fraud understand they're not alone, that they're not stupid, that they can recover from it. I glanced over at her, my wife, still trying to make things right, even for people she'd never met. I think that's a good idea, I said. You do? Yeah. You went through something terrible, but you came out the other side. That experience matters. If you can use it to help other people, that's not just redemption, that's purpose. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you for understanding. On our last day in Ireland, we visited a small church in the village where Rachel's grandmother had been born. It was old, maybe 200 years or more, with stone walls and wooden pews worn smooth by generations of worshippers. We sat in the quiet sanctuary, just the two of us, and let the peace of the place settle over us. Rachel, I said after a while, I need to tell you something. She looked at me, concerned. What?
I forgive you. I know I've said I was working toward it, that I was trying, but sitting here right now, I realize I actually have. I forgive you for what you did, all of it. Her eyes filled with tears immediately. David! Let me finish, I said gently. I forgive you, but more than that, I understand you. I understand why you did what you did. I understand that you were hurting and feeling invisible and looking for something to make you feel valued. I understand that Marcus manipulated that vulnerability. And I understand that you spent the last year trying to make it right, not just with me, but with yourself. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. I needed to say it out loud, in this place where your family came from. I wanted your grandmother's memory to witness it, I guess. To know that her granddaughter married a man who chose forgiveness over bitterness. Rachel cried then, deep, cleansing tears that she'd probably been holding back for months. I held her in that old church while she sobbed, and I felt something in my own chest finally release. The last bit of anger, the last bit of resentment. It was gone. When we flew home a few days later, we came back different than we'd left. Not perfect, not without scars, but stronger, more honest, more committed to the work of being married, not just living together, but actually seeing each other, valuing each other, choosing each other every single day. The weeks turned into months. We settled back into our routines, but they were better routines now, healthier ones. I still worked hard, but I came home for dinner. Rachel still worked at the library, but she also made time for her painting class and her support group for fraud victims. We had date nights every week, sometimes just coffee at the diner, sometimes dinner at a nice restaurant in the city, sometimes just walks through town holding hands. We went to counseling less frequently now, once a month instead of once a week, but we still went. Dr. Reeves said we were one of her success stories, but she reminded us that the work of marriage never really ends. You've done the hard part, she told us in one of our last regular sessions. You've rebuilt trust, learned to communicate, forgiven each other. But maintaining a healthy marriage is ongoing. You can't just fix it once and assume it'll stay fixed. You have to keep choosing each other. We will, Rachel said, looking at me. Every day. Emma visited one weekend in the fall, about 18 months after the whole thing with Marcus had come to light. She and Michael were doing well, settling into married life, talking about buying a house eventually. The three of us, me, Rachel, and Emma, sat on the back porch one evening watching the leaves fall from the oak trees. "Mom, Dad," Emma said suddenly, "I need to tell you guys something." My heart jumped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly, then smiled. "I'm pregnant. You're going to be grandparents." Rachel burst into tears, happy tears this time. She pulled Emma into a hug while I sat there trying to process the news. A grandchild, a new generation, a new beginning. "When?" I managed to ask. "March, right around your anniversary, actually." I looked at Rachel and she looked at me, and we both started laughing. March, the same month we'd gotten married 25 years ago, the same month we'd nearly ended our marriage, the same month we'd chosen to fight for each other instead of walking away. "That's perfect," Rachel said, wiping her eyes. "That's absolutely perfect." After Emma left, Rachel and I stayed on the porch long after the sun had set. "A grandchild," she said wonderingly. "We're going to be grandparents." "Feels surreal," I admitted. "David, I need to say something." "Okay." "Thank you for giving me a second chance, for not giving up on us, for choosing to forgive me when you had every right to walk away. Because of that choice, I get to be here for this. I get to be a grandmother. I get to watch Emma become a mother. I get to keep building a life with you. And none of that would have happened if you'd made a different choice that day in the kitchen." I pulled her close. I made the only choice I could live with. Yeah, I was angry. Yeah, I was hurt. But walking away from 23 years, from you, from the life we'd built together, I couldn't do it. Not without at least trying to fix what was broken. "I'm glad you tried," she said. "I'm so glad you tried." We sat there in the darkness, holding each other, thinking about the future that was unfolding before us. A grandchild, more years together, more opportunities to love each other better. The money Marcus stole never came back completely. Even with the $22,000 from the FBI seizure, we were still down about $40,000 from where we'd been. It took us nearly 2 years to rebuild our savings to anything close to what we'd lost. But here's what I learned. Money can be earned back. Trust is harder. Love is harder. A marriage built on honesty and real communication, that's the thing worth fighting for. Marcus went to prison for 15 years. I read about it in the paper. 15 years for stealing millions from people who trusted him. It didn't feel like enough, but it was something. And knowing he couldn't hurt anyone else during that time gave me a strange sense of peace. Rachel's support group grew to about 20 people, men and women of all ages who'd been victims of financial fraud. They met twice a month at the library, sharing their stories, supporting each other, learning how to trust again. Rachel led the group with patience and compassion, and watching her help other people heal helped her continue healing too. "You know what the hardest part is?" one woman said at a meeting I attended with Rachel. "It's not even the money. It's feeling stupid, feeling like everyone's judging you for being gullible." "You're not stupid," Rachel told her firmly. "You're human. These people are professionals at manipulation. They're good at what they do because they understand human psychology. They know exactly what to say to make you trust them. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you someone who's capable of trust. And that's actually a good quality, even when it gets exploited." Watching her say those words she probably needed to hear herself a year earlier, I felt proud. Proud of how she'd taken something shameful and transformed it into something meaningful. Now, sitting here at 52 years old, Looking back on everything that happened, I can see it all more clearly. The betrayal was real. The pain was real. The damage was real. But so was the healing. So was the forgiveness. So was the choice to keep building something together instead of letting it crumble. Marriage isn't perfect. People aren't perfect. We make mistakes, sometimes small ones, sometimes catastrophic ones. But what matters is what we do after the mistake. Do we run away? Do we give up? Or do we stay and do the hard work of making it right? Rachel stayed. She did the work. She owned what she'd done, made amends where she could, and committed to being better. And I stayed too. I chose forgiveness over bitterness. I chose to believe that people can change, that marriages can heal, and that love is worth fighting for. Was it easy? No. There were days I wanted to give up. Days when the anger felt too big to overcome. Days when I wondered if I was being stupid for trying to save something that seemed irreparably broken. But we got through those days, together. And on the other side of them, we found something better than what we had before. Not just a marriage that survived betrayal, but a marriage that was strengthened by it. A marriage built on honesty and real communication, and the understanding that we're both imperfect people trying our best. If I could go back and tell my younger self, the one standing in the kitchen with that bank statement, feeling like his world was ending, what would I say? I'd tell him that it's going to hurt, that the pain is going to feel impossible to bear, that there will be nights when he can't sleep and days when he can barely function. But I'd also tell him that on the other side of that pain is something worth having. That if he chooses to do the work, if he chooses to forgive, if he chooses to rebuild, it won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Because marriage isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do when mistakes happen. It's about whether you choose to face the hard things together or let them tear you apart. Rachel and I chose to face them together, and I'm grateful every day that we did. The bank statement that ended her lies also became the beginning of our truth. The truth about who we were, what we needed, and how we could be better for each other. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. We lost our savings. We nearly lost our marriage. We lost our sense of security and certainty. But we found something more important. We found each other again. Really found each other. Not the comfortable strangers we'd become, but the partners we'd always meant to be. And that, I've learned, is worth more than any amount of money in a savings account. That's worth everything.